Let's move on down to our next story. The Central Bank of Nigeria is in focus as it has announced a fine of 150 million naira on deposit money banks found guilty of giving out new naira notes to currency hawkers. According to CBN, the practice of releasing new notes to hawkers prevents efficient and effective cash distribution to customers and also the general public.
The Apex Bank has warned that any branch of a financial institution found culpable will face a penalty of 150 million naira for the first violation, with subsequent infractions attracting stricter sanctions under the provisions of the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, BOFIA 2020. To ensure compliance, the CBN will increase periodic spot checks in banking halls and ATMs while deploying mystery shoppers to uncover illicit cash hawking spots across the country. Joining us now is the Chief Economist at SPM Professionals, Paul Alaje. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hawking cash has sort of become a trade now in the past few years. First of all, because of the culture of spraying money, which many have now found to be illegal, even though they still go ahead to do it. But in the past 2 years, we will see that the POS operators have also become very, very key part in getting access to cash because of the naira, the issues with the old currency and the new currency. This sanction that the CBN has put out against the banks, how well do you think that these sanctions will be able to function to mitigate cash scarcity in this regard?
Thank you once again for having me. Beautiful morning to you, to those watching us now, and those that will watch later in the future. Sanction meted on banks, especially bank branches, for, if you like, giving out cash to cash hawkers is very important because just 4 days ago, it was reported on one of the national newspapers that the reason why we have cash scarcity, and I'm talking of Association of Bankers, they've challenged Central Bank and said Central Bank was the reason why we have cash scarcity. So I'm not surprised that Central Bank is coming to say, okay, we know where part of the cash given to you are going to. Their allegation is that Central Bank has not met with the demand for cash because, according to the bankers, there are two sources of through which a bank gets cash. One is through Central Bank. Secondly, is through retailer, and you can trace some of these retailers to cash hawkers, among others. So if banks are saying that the reason why we've had a lot of cash scarcity, and this is a reputable media house, so you can ask people perhaps on your X page or any other platform if they found cash, sufficiently as they require to meet their basic needs. I tell you that for the research we've done, it's becoming relatively unavailable. So now that Central Bank is saying, we know that you are giving cash to hawkers and you are perhaps doing that for gain, quote and unquote, we're going to charge you approximately 150 million naira per branch for which this has happened. And if you check, I think this will go a long way for banks to set up systems, to set up a mechanism for managing their branches such that this does not repeat itself.
Okay, so there's a worry here, and the worry simply is this, that just a few weeks ago, the central bank governor had sent out a communique to banks warning them that they should ensure that the ATMs dispense cash, especially to Nigerians. Mr. Alaje, I can tell you that it's been weeks. I have done the survey myself. I've driven around different ATMs. In short, at some point, I was called the ATM merchant. I was looking for cash, trying this one, trying that one. Some, before I even get there, the security officer will say, they dispense cash. Do you think that this one would hold water? If the banks haven't heeded to the initial directive from the central bank governor, Nigerians are worried if this is just a call to action that would never be activated.
See, Association of Bankers have spoken clearly to say that central bank is not able to meet up with its demand. So even if you sanction banks 500 million or 1 billion naira per branch, the question is, do we have sufficient cash? According to the bankers, No, we don't have sufficient cash in the circulation. The only other source they have is through retailers. So while the retailers cannot do the magnitude of what the central bank would do, the answer is we don't have sufficient cash in circulation. Now, central bank is also worried regarding the available cash in the system. Oftentimes, central bank will say, oh, our cash in circulation has increased to 1 trillion naira, 1.1 trillion naira. And I will laugh. I laugh because perhaps we don't understand how economic works, that we are chasing our own tail. You have devalued the naira, the same central bank have devalued the naira so very much that if you want to buy a loaf of bread, it will now take you more than 1,000, about 2,000. If you want to get your tire, depending on the capacity, maybe 50 rims, that was 100 naira jumped to 200, now is about 500 naira. Do you want to transfer to that person? You say, well, there is a particular app many people use. Say, if I don't, the app is not even going to give me cash. So ordinarily, my demand for the naira for gauging of tire would have been 200. But now it will increase to 500 naira. Why? Because the price has increased. So here is it. A major inflator nation. Nigeria is an inflator. When it comes to, when I say inflator, I mean inflation. So we play a key role now because of our high inflation. We should not be surprised. We should not be surprised that demand for money in circulation would increase the same way. So in making monetary policy, we should try to balance it and look at it from a broad perspective. Our job will be, how do we manage inflation? And we know the kind of inflation we have. It is monetary-driven inflation more than non-monetary-driven inflation. So if it is monetary-driven inflation, what are the causes of monetary-driven inflation? The causes, number one, printing of money. And printing of money does not mean that there is too much money in the circulation. And that is why you see people should understand the difference between economics, finance, banking, and accounting. To someone who is not within that field, we think, oh, all are the same. That is not correct. That you have too much money, that you have cash in circulation may not necessarily mean too much money in circulation. It depends on the volume of goods that is available. So here is it. When we printed $50 billion worth of naira in the last dispensation, what we have said is that without adding a proportionate volume of goods, we have caused inflation. So you say that from the last administration, it appears though there is so much money in circulation and there was concern. As much as central bank moved the money, brought policy, what did that lead to? Hunger, poverty, and deprivation. Because the real cause of that inflation was those in central bank and government of today who felt we can create money from nothing, printing money and gave it a very good name, ways and means. This administration seems to do little on ways and means, as it has not categorically printed money in such magnitude, even though our information may be that in some magnitude we might have. But what have we done under this administration? The second leg of inflating an economy. And what is that leg? Devaluing the currency. So when you devalue your currency, you are also going to have major inflation. Why? Because people now need more money to buy the same volume, because as you are devaluing, you are not improving the volume, you are not increasing the volume of goods in your economy. So what will people use to buy? Now, the option will now be poor. There are options. We can go through a digital method. Then I ask, I don't want to mention bank names. For some of our banks, they don't have the capacity to handle the volume of the transaction that happens on their platforms. So and if they don't have the volumes, we have a lot of downtime period. Last week, we saw what happened to one of the telco infraco in Nigeria as the network affected virtually 6 banks. In fact, on my Twitter page, I said maybe 2 weeks ago last week that which bank is dealing with you or which bank are you dealing with? And the response is there. So when people now knew that they need to carry out emergency transaction, they will look for cash. So because everybody now want to look for cashables at the same time, we're running to the ATM, we're going across the counter, and the cash is not just available. Why? Because policy requirements and the policy environments don't align. So it's important for those making monetary policy to understand that the nature of our economy will certainly require more than what they are projecting for the economy.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you've really done a lot of clarity in your explanation, because I was going to ask you how exactly we've gotten here, because I remember at the time when Godwin Emefiele had started the conversations about redesigning the naira. Part of the reasons was that they needed to mop up a large portion of the cash and bring it back into the commercial vaults of the banks. And now you're saying that there's not a lot of money in circulation. Ultimately, this boils down to policies. So, this festive season, how do we ensure, what measures can be put in order to navigate the potential scarcity? Because Joe has started to mention, there are a number of people who have started to mention that there is scarcity of cash. CBN is trying on their end to put these measures, but from what I'm hearing from you, these measures will not stop the cash scarcity. So is there any short-term measure that can be put in place to ensure that, we do not encounter cash scarcity in this season?
Well, I think Central Bank has come up with policy to tell commercial banks and other deposit money banks, among other financial institutions, to ensure that their ATMs are funded as required by the Central Bank directive. Well, whether they will do it or not is another conversation entirely. Now, the response from banks, which of course I've read in their communique, is that it is what we have that we will give. We have a lot of branches. How much exactly in cash are we getting from the central bank? So if we ration, we have to ration what we have. And when we ration, some of the time, our customers may not have sufficient volume of cash that they should have gotten directly from their ATM. So as much as we want to blame the commercial bank, we should also call the big brother here, the Central Bank of Nigeria, that more needs to be done. We need to reconsider the total volume of cash in the economy and then make some decisions. Now, let me play the devil's advocate. Perhaps Central Bank is thinking, we have printed a lot of money. Where is it getting stored? We have politicians who are quite smart than perhaps everybody. Election is just the year after next year, and we have seen this pattern in our system. From time to time, we start seeing people stocking money, keeping money, and so on and so forth. I will get to the other leg of this so that I create the balance. Now, the first leg is that political activity in Nigeria is reasons why there's scarcity of cash, because political transactions are predominantly done through cash. Your question will be, but we don't have any election in view. We are more or less in 2025, a year after primaries will start, an election will start in earnest. So when that starts, what does it mean? It means that politicians will push cash in the hands of the electorate to vote for them. And don't believe me, I've seen on the screen of another national television where a woman said that we have voted and we have been paid for our vote. That remains a record for life. Even though many times we said these things, they don't happen. So here is the point. What must we do? What must we do in the situation that cash seems to play a key role in the conversation and in our polity? I have said time and again, timing is important. What Emefiele wanted to do was to change the color of money. That plan was not properly thought out, even though it's a good plan, and the timing was extremely wrong. If you want monies that people have kept to return to the bank, find a time where politics, where there are no elections, so that the incumbent will not think you are doing them in disfavor, you are favoring them. Look for that time where all the monies everybody has, without the central bank having interest in dealing with some sections of the society or wanting to favor a political party or disable. The job of central bank is not to involve in politics. At this time, this December, to around August 2025, there are no major political interests. Maybe pocket of states and local government will be having their rerun election. This is the best time. Which color of money, so that monies that people have kept, they can return to the vote. But doing it in 2026, when it's so close to election, and we're now telling people you have to certain date, will not work. And this will involve a lot of political conversation, the president talking to the governors, because this is of national interest, carrying along the National Assembly, even the judiciary if need be, for us to see that, yes, you want to manage the control of money, even though the former central bank governor said, oh, we have lost control of money. Why? Because you printed money that you did not create value for.
Wow.
So another thing is, it appears central banks is also wondering, we've lost control of money because you have devalued the currency. See, economics has trade-offs. It has trade-offs. So in making policy, you must be honest to yourself. I mean, you don't want to be honest to yourself. Call people that will be honest to you. To tell you that if you impregnate your wife, in the next 9 months, expect a baby at least. And if you are lucky, you have triplets. So that's how economics work. If you make a policy, what are the possible outcomes from this policy?
Wow. Well said, Paul Alaje. Always a pleasure having you join us. And thank you so much for dissecting this, especially for our viewers. We look forward to have you join us again, hopefully when the naira rebounds or gains so much strength, and hopefully 50 naira would have power again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, great.